All right, so in this video, what my intention is to kind of bring all of these ideas together where we're going to utilize an array. And in that array, we're going to, when this window loads, when our browser window loads, we're going to fill our LIs, L-I-L-L-I, with whatever's in our array. And then as we're also then going to add an event listener to each of those LIs. And so if we don't have it, like previously we've done an on-click to something, but now we're going to dynamically add event listeners to each of our LIs. So let's just get started, and I'm going to paste some code in because it's easier than watching me type. So the first thing I'm going to do is create an event listener for my window. So we're going to use the load event, and what will happen is after the page is completely rendered, the DOM is completely filled and completed, then this event will fire. And I've created an anonymous function within my add event listener for the window. So it's kind of like initialize this program, initialize this code, run this immediately after the DOM is loaded. And so in here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create I'm going to copy and paste in. I've created an array that has 2 items in it. And this array, so I use the var keyword, and my array name is animals, and in my array, I've initialized 2 animals right off the bat, a dog and a cat. And so the idea is I'm going to, as this function runs, it's going to create some LIs inside the UL and from my arrays. So let's make that happen. So I'm going to use a for loop to make that happen. And I'll do for var I equals 0, initialize my I to 0, as long as I is less than animals, this is why I copy and paste, animals dot length, so run through each element in the array, I plus plus, and we're going to, I need to grab this listing, don't I? So I think I'm going to also add a variable so I don't have to keep typing in document get element by ID over and over again. So I'm going to create a variable. I'm going to call it the list. So I'm going to go grab this UL, and so I don't have to keep writing document get element by ID. And so now the idea is that I'm going to do the list.innerHTML is equal to, and then I do plus equals because I don't want to overwrite the inner HTML every time. I want to keep appending to what's ever in there. And so we're going to make an LI out of my HTML. We're going to concatenate the value that's in the array, which is animals of I. And then we're going to concatenate the closing LI. And now let's see if that works on our browser. Here, and if I refresh that, then sure enough, I can see the LIs are being created. So far, so good. So the next thing I want to do is I want to add event listeners to each of these. In our last video, we saw that we could add on-click to our, where am I here, sorry. We could add on-click to our LI. So I could have done an on-click and sent this. But there's another way to do it, and so that's what we're going to do next. All right, so just to keep things separated, so it's always good to use a function that, remember, a function does a single task, and it's reusable code that we could run from any point in time. So I'm going to use a function, and I'm going to call it add the events. And so what we're going to do is, first of all, I'm going to get a variable called lists, and I'm going to go grab those LIs that I just created. So we're going to use something a little different now. We've used getElementsByID, which is returned a single value. But now what we're going to use is we're going to do this elements. Notice that there's a plural now. So we did element by ID, and now it's elements. There's an S. So this indicates that this is plural, and it's going to return more than one. So let me just click on getElementsByTagName, and we're going to go grab all those LIs that we just created. So now what we're getting back is most likely, I'm guessing, going to be an array. So we're going to get an array of all of our LIs. And how do I know that? Well, I don't know. So let's just test some things out. So I'm going to alert my lists and just see what happens. And then maybe console log lists just for debugging purposes, just to first of all see if it's working, and then second of all to see what on earth I'm getting in my hands when I use that method name. So after I create those elements, I'm going to call this function. So add the events, parentheses, and let's run that and see what we get. So I save it, and then let me pull up my browser, and I'm going to so it says I'm getting an HTML collection back, okay, and I don't quite know what I'm getting, so let's look and see in our console what we're getting. So it is saying I'm getting a collection, and you can see that I'm getting those LIs back. So LI, there's a 0 and there's a 1, so that, and length of 2, so that indicates that I'm getting an array with 2 elements in that array. So now I've got a hold of both of those LIs. So what can we do with that information? All right, so what I think I'm going to try is, again, copy and pasting, but I'm going to comment out my alert because I don't want to keep seeing that while I'm running my code. So I'm going to create a for loop. So I'm going to loop through that array that I got back, and I can do that just like we've done before. So now I'm able to loop through each element in the array, and this is going to loop through 2 times because I have 2 elements in the array. And let's just do something again. Let's build upward. So in order to get to an element, I need to do the array name, and then I'm going to put in I, because I is keeping track of which element I am currently working with, element 0 or element 1. And so let's try this and see what happens. So let me pull up my browser and refresh it, and let's see what gets console logged. So I've got, a lot of information with that LI, but I can definitely see that each LI is somehow being console logged. So let's try this. Let's do console log a list of I, and then any of those properties that are valid with that object, which happens to be inner HTML. So if I try that now, let's see what happens. So now I'm getting those individual elements. So far so good. So this is just to sort of prove to you that I'm getting each individual element, but that's really not the overall goal. The overall goal is to loop through each of those LIs and add an event listener dynamically. All right, so let's go back into our Visual Studio Code, which is here. There we go. And we've got, okay, so far we're console logging the inner HTML, and we are looping through the lists, our array of LIs. All right, so now instead of doing that, or while we're doing that, we're going to add an event listener. So we'll do this. We'll say lists, that's our LI array, lists of I dot add event listener, and then it's going to be a click event, and then we're going to do a anonymous function, and let's see, what shall we do? Well, right now let's just do a click. So let's do an alert and maybe a giggle. So let's see it working first, and then we'll do something a little bit more meaningful. So always trying to build up. So we're looping through our LIs by getting, because we've got an array of tag names of LI. We're looping through those lists, and we're going to add an event listener. So when I click on one of those lists, I should get the giggle. So let's see what happens. So I'm going to refresh my page, and I got the giggle. Yay. And so each of those are going to do a giggle because I'm not trying to make either of them unique yet. But there's the catch. What if I need to also, like in our homework, we sent over this keyword, but I don't have this keyword in my fingertips now. So what can I do? Well, let's jump back into the code and see. All right, so it turns out that we can't send anything into our anonymous function except it'll automatically send the object that got clicked on. So instead of having to write this, we're automatically going to get this object that was clicked on. I don't get what you're telling me. All right. So what we need to do, and the only thing we can do, we can't send our function anything except one variable, and it can be anything. Usually it's like E, which stands for the event. So that's kind of standard. So I'll use that because it's standard, but it really could be anything. It could be the OBJ that was clicked or something like that. So what the point is let me just demonstrate it. So instead of alerting the giggle now, let's alert what E is. Let's trying to figure out what's going on here. So again, just kind of doing this in pieces. So I'm going to refresh and click on, and it says that it was a mouse event. Okay, that's not seeming very useful to me because all of these are mouse events. Okay, so let me help. So let's, instead of making it a mouse event, so that's what the E is. So now let's say E, and we're going to use the keyword target. And target is going to be that object that was sent from that click event. So let me just see. So now when I click on, I'm getting an object. So now I'm getting the individual object that's being clicked on. Let's do this. Instead of alerting it, let's console log it and see what we're getting. So if I console log e.target, now what am I getting? Let's see. So I'll come back in my page and reload it. Go to my inspect, and let's go to console, and now let's refresh it and see what we're getting. Well, now I'm getting an LI that goes on and on and on. So which one am I getting? I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure down here, if I go far enough, there's the inner HTML. So that's in fact the cat element. And then if I click on the dog one, oh, it's console logging it, it's not updating it. There we go, I did it plenty of times. So let's do it again just to prove the point. So I clicked on the dog, I'm getting a new LI object, and if I go down far enough, I'm going to see that in fact that's the dog object. So that means that if I want to get to the element dynamically, I'm attaching a add event listener dynamically to all of those elements that got returned in my array. I am doing it on a click event. I'm creating an anonymous function. The only thing that is sendable in that anonymous function is the event, that thing that happened that triggered this event listener, which in our case happened to be a mouse click, which is what we were trying to catch. So then we can utilize the target keyword to get drill down and get the object that was clicked on that created this event. And then if we wanted to dig down a little bit further, we could get the inner HTML. And so now we should be able to get that value that we just saw in our dev tools, but now we've drilled down and we're able to get it within our code. So let's see what happens. So now I click on cat and I'm getting the cat, and I click on dog and I'm getting the dog. Whew. So in this video, we have successfully dynamically written our ULs, our LIs and our UL from an array. So we created an array. We wrote those elements from the array into our UL. We did that dynamically when our window first loaded. We then went back in and we looped through all of those elements by tag name. We received them as an array. That array went into lists. We looped through that array and we added an event listener. Each time we looped through the array, we added an event listener to the LI. We did it as an anonymous function. We caught the event that fired this particular event listener. And then we drilled down to the point where we found the target. So now we know what object sent this event to this function. And then we drilled down to one of its properties, and then we were able to console log it. So in our next video, we'll put this into practice.